charging up
Yeah.
until 10 seconds until we start. I'm going to do a quick intro and then Gezim, I'll pass it to you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our session. My name is Mentor Dida. And in this panel right here, we are going to be super delighted and inspired to hear from these wonderful people regarding our theme today, which is the theme of, the homeland, what it means to be an Albanian living in diaspora. Each of the speakers will share their personal stories on how did they manage to make it to the diaspora world, but also how do they relate to the homeland. We will hear stories on how they draw strengths and also how they go to visit maybe, or how is it that they stay in touch with all of that. We all know that, honoring your roots is something that, to know who you are and where you come from. And, this is where we get inspired to show up fully, to give back, to honor our traditions and values. And part of the reason behind the origin Al is this story of connecting us, story of reminding people that honoring our roots is a superpower we can bring into the world today. With me here today, we have four fantastic speakers. We have Mr. Gezim Qadraku, we have Mrs. Ilira Aliai, Mr. Richard Lukaj, and Mr. Ilir Zherka. The way we're gonna go through the presentations will be first Gezim will go, then Ilira, then Richard, and Ilir will close us in the end. So, dear audience, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to write it in the chat or let us know. And then after these presentations, which are like 5 to 7 minutes, are finished, we will have the opportunity to engage with you all, to answer any questions, and just have a nice conversation for us to wrap things around. All right? So, are we ready to start? Gezim, take over, my friend. You are the first one. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Mentor, and thank you for inviting me. So let's get to my experience. I was born in Kosovo, but I left my country when I was 2 years old. I moved to Italy with my parents, and we lived there for 20 years. 6 years ago, I moved to Germany, but today I'm going to focus on my Italian experience. I have several examples to explain what did it mean to be an Albanian in Italy. At the end, I decided to choose the one related to my name. One day, when I was in kindergarten, someone called me Jimmy. From that moment, my life split in two parts. So I was Gezim at home with my parents, and as soon as I got outside, I became Jimmy, so with my friends at school. Growing up, I kept introducing myself as Jimmy and never as Gezim, because it would have meant to receive tons of questions. So, for example, where do you come from? Where is Kosovo? What is Kosovo? Are you Muslim? Do you drink alcohol? Do you eat this? Do you eat that? So, as you can imagine, I didn't want to go through all of this every time I got to know someone. And for many years, I thought that this was the main reason why I introduced myself with my nickname. After I left Italy, I realized that actually there was something else behind it, and it was my wish to sort of make a favor to Italian people. I wanted their life to be more comfortable and easier when it was about me. I never pretended them to know my name, not even to pronounce it properly. I just wanted them to think that I was a perfect Italian guy. And probably for someone it might sound not that important, a nickname or a name, but I realized how much important is how people call you, how big the influence was on my life in Italy, this detail. And now I realize that I've hidden my Albanian part for 20 years when I was in Italy. And I didn't do that because I didn't like being Albanian or I had bad feelings about my country or my culture, nor because someone asked me to do it. I just wanted to be accepted by the society. I can say that I always been proud of who I am. I never had bad feelings about my country, and in fact, I can say that I spent my years in Italy just waiting for the summer because that was the moment when we went back to Kosovo. And still now, those summers represent for me the highest level of happiness. But this fear of not being accepted by this society was caused by many comments that I kept hearing around me from people I didn't know or from my friends too on migrants or also on Albanians. For many years, Albanians were the main cause of every problem in Italy. It was always Albanians' fault when something bad happened. And sometimes I had the courage to tell my friends that I was exactly the same as those people they were insulting. And they always used to tell me the same thing. You are not like them, you're like us. And thinking about this sentence right now just gives me the proof that I was hiding myself properly, that it was working. And right now, I do believe that in many countries, migrants are accepted only when they get assimilated. There is this narrative that if you go to a foreign country and you integrate yourself, everything will be fine, you will be accepted. But I think that is not completely true. Sometimes integration is not enough. And I can speak for my experience. I was accepted. I was considered as one of them. I had, I can say, almost a perfect life in Italy. I cannot complain about anything. I had a life that a son of migrants can't even dream of. But this happened because I never showed my Albanian part. I still feel bad for what I did. I shame myself for what I did. But I also think that this is one of the most difficult aspects of being part of the diaspora, because sometimes it's like being two different persons. You feel you are living two lives in one body. So there are times when you ask yourself, okay, fine, but who am I? And for me was, am I Gezim, the guy who speaks Albanian, the guys who cannot wait for the summer to go back to Kosovo, the guy who gets emotional every time there is something related to my country, or am I Jimmy, the guy who speaks Italian and the guy who is considered as one of them by my Italian friends? And it took me long time to understand and to accept that I didn't have to hide one part of myself. Because if people like it, fine. If people don't like it, it's their problem, not my problem. And from that moment, I started to talk about and write about my Albanian part. And more I do, more I realized how much I enjoy, how much it helps me to do it, to talk about my country, my culture, my roots, and my personal experience. So to conclude, despite this nickname experience, I never forgot who I was. Even though I kept hiding my Albanian part, it kept growing and living inside me. And I think that being here today and having the privilege to share my experience with you is the proof of that. So really, thank you a lot for giving me this opportunity, and it was a pleasure to share my experience with you.
Oh, thank you, Gezim. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. It definitely hit me on the heart. So many parts. I love the part about name. I mean, my name is Mentor, so I have to go in and explain that that's my name, not my title. So I totally can relate with you. I can so relate.
But you could be both.
Yeah. I used to be a math tutor where my title was mentor, and then my name tag said mentor. So everybody was so confused by that. Thank you, Gezim, so much. That was a very heartfelt and beautiful story. Next up, we have Ilira. Ilira, please take it. We cannot hear you, Ilira. Maybe you're on mute? No? Try maybe if you go on the settings, try to change the microphone. I see some comments. Thank you, Najia, for the comments. Mersin, thank you so much for the comment. Najia, again, you're a star. Ilira.
Do you hear me now?
Yep, now we hear you.
Oh,
perfect.
That's great.
All right.
Okay.
So go ahead.
I got a slight heart attack, but we got it. That's great. I'm very overwhelmed with the whole technical aspects, but we got it. Yeah, I will take 30 seconds before I start my presentation to just thank Gezim so much for what he just shared. Honestly, it's what I feel most thankful about these events is first and foremost the opportunity to hear my own story through somebody else's words. It's incredible. It shows to me, and I think to many of us, again and again and again, that first of all, we're not alone, that there is nothing wrong in our experience. Someone else has been through these things before. And I think this has a very empowering effect. I think that's wonderful. And thank you, Gezim, so much. It really resonated with me, your story. And so I'll start by telling a few things about myself. I was born in Saranda in the south of Albania, and in 1997 we moved with my family to Athens. That's where I spent basically all my life. I'm talking to you now from Germany, from Berlin. This is where I live in the past 6 years and a half. But the way that I relate the most with these topics is through my eyes as an Albanian Greek youngster, let's say, because that's been the longest part of my life, and that's been the one that shaped me the most. The year that I moved to Greece, 1997, you all know it, has been a very turbulent year. That means that also the experience that I made as an Albanian growing up in Greece very much reflected that era where being an Albanian was quite a taboo, especially in Greece. So that's the country I know the best. This is what I'm going to refer to. It was such a taboo that either you would have to hide yourself, the same way that people did it in Italy as well in some way, or you would try to integrate in the most obsessive way by changing your name, by getting baptized, but by not telling where you come from, by speaking to your kids only in Greek, by not speaking Albanian on the bus, on the streets, and so on, because you were suspicious. And I'm very thankful nowadays for having the name that I have, because I was forced from day one to have to answer this question. Where are you from? How do you do this and that? I don't know. I mean, I had to say from the beginning that I'm Albanian, and I put it out there, and I had to live with it. Nowadays, I'm thankful for that, because I didn't have to hide myself so much. But I have so many people in my family who could, because of their Christian names, let's say, hide, and it cost them a lot because they spent all their life living in secrecy. And nowadays, I can tell that that's a very traumatizing experience to make. So despite me having a rather, I don't know, happy childhood with everything that comes with living in a big city like Athens and so on, and going to school and having all these things and activities that one does in that age, I have to say that I grew up in a country that knew nothing about my homeland. Absolutely nothing. I can tell that they would know more things about South Goa in India than about the country that was in the same borders with them, which was Albania. Therefore, I integrated a big part of this view towards Albania, because if the country where I live shows no interest about where I come from, maybe where I come from is not a place worth discovering. I can tell you that I had this kind of internalized suspicion, I don't know how to put it, neglect, way of not appreciating Albania until I was 18 or 19. I was spending my summers there. My summers were fabulous, but I couldn't share the summers with anyone that was outside of Albania. It was something that I would live in the summer from June to August. It was phenomenal. It was the first heartbreaks and the first heart pulses and the first loves and the first boyfriends and friends and this and that, but I couldn't share it outside of the bubble of the 2 months, nowhere. So I also had this fragmented relationship to Albania. And it was only later on, by chance, that I kind of rediscovered my country, and where I said, no, I'm going to start speaking my language. I'm going to start reading Albanian literature. Thankfully, I also studied later Albanian language and German language and literature, so I was more and more interested in literature, in books, in things that were kind of opening the broader window to the world. And something amazing happened there. I started visiting Albania more. I went to the capital city because I thought that Albania starts in Saranda and ends in Ksamil. That was the border of my Albania. My brother moved to Tirana, so I went to the capital city, and I was like, whoa, this is a cool place to be. Then I went to other cities, big cities with culture, with not only the beach of Saranda and Ksamil, but with a kind of cosmopolitanism that also immigrants bring back to the country, with the cool fancy cafes, with the restaurants, with nightlife, with the museums, and all these things that I discovered. And suddenly I realized that the picture I had about my homeland did not reflect the homeland. It reflected my own fears and my own misperceptions that I had integrated for so long. Later on, I left Greece and I moved to Germany. And this is where the big change happened, because I came here, and as luck had it, I got to know people who had been in Albania. And they remind me nowadays that my first reaction would be a shock. What? You've been to Albania? Why? This is how I would react. And people would tell me, because it's a great country to be, why not? And this is where I first started realizing that there is a whole world out there that considers Albania a fascinating country. And this is where I, without wanting to abuse our time that is given to us, I will take another 2 minutes. I came up with this idea, okay, I happen to be now in a place where people are very interested about Albania. I'll do something about it. And in 2018 and 2019, and then COVID came, so the pattern was kind of interrupted, I started organizing study trips to Albania for friends and colleagues here in Berlin, coming from all parts of Europe. And I want to briefly share just a few pictures. And Mentor, you will tell me if that's going to work out.
Let's see. Pictures, say 1,000 words.
Yeah. Do you see
We're
this?
going the extra mile. Yes.
Oh, that's great. I don't see you anymore, but you will tell me if there is something that I'm doing wrong here. So I went with like 13 colleagues from Berlin and other parts of Europe to Tirana. And we did all sorts of activities, like getting to know the city and getting to know the history. Here we are at the Museum of History in Tirana. And we did activities about the language. I don't know if you see this picture here where it says Mirmunjes and Guten Morgen. So we started kind of, I don't know, with playful activities, getting to know a little bit about the other language. And we went to amazing places such as the House of Leaves, Shtëpia Gjeteve in Tirana, where we found out, we learned a lot about the terrible isolation of the 50 years during communism, and this is the house basically of surveillance. And this is something that put also for me the Albanian history a little bit in the global or European or global scale. It was realizing that what my country has been through, let's say, is not just something that happened in an isolated bubble, but it's also a part of European and global history. I think that's a very, very important feeling important experience to make, to realize that you are not some sort of historic accident in the world, but you are part of a bigger world community, even when it comes to such dramatic events. This is a group that I traveled the first year with. And of course, we also did fun activities such as, I don't know, going out and visiting cool places and bars, and it all belongs to this kind of trips. And we met also with fascinating people. You see here a meeting that we had with Fatos Lubonia, who is one of the dissidents and biggest intellectuals in Albania. It was such a great luck and opportunity in this study trip to meet with people who have amazing, fascinating stories to tell. We also met with Agron Tufa, for instance, who was back then the director of the institution that researches the crimes during communism, also a very important personality of Albania. We also went to Berat, for instance. We had there the opportunity to get to know the city, a medieval city with such a great and important history. We even got to visit the Solomon Museum, where there is an archive about hundreds of Jewish people who were saved by Albanians during the Second World War, during the Holocaust. You know, these were all fascinating experiences. And we are here at Muligiu in Tirana, just ending. This is the final dinner we had there, and trying the local cuisine and so on. These are just a few pictures to give you a glimpse of the things that we did. And it was not just a great experience for my guests to make in Albania. It was a great experience for me, for myself. It was like a gift that I gave to myself, and that I realized that we do not lack anything, but we need to have the courage. We need to have the curiosity to get to know our country with the same curiosity that we have when we go to all these cosmopolitan places in Europe or around the world. We should discover our homeland with the exact same curiosity, because we have so much to show to ourselves and the others. And as I said, unfortunately, COVID came, and I couldn't continue the third trip, which actually was prepared and designed to go with people with my own biography there, meaning Albanian people living in Germany, in Greece, in Italy, elsewhere, whoever would be interested to go and see Albania, not just as tourists, but a little bit kind of rediscovering our roots. And I'm so thankful and so happy that Germin is taking this big step now and is launching this event, because it's like a big format of my little tiny program that I had back then in my mind. So that's all. These are my 2 cents. I think I took a bit more time than you gave me, but I hope that's okay. Thank you, Mentor.
We didn't hear you.
Richard.
I'm gonna jump in here. I think I got Mentor's sign language. So first, I too want to thank Gezim and Ilira. I too felt that emotion of hearing words from somebody else that resonated with me as well. I am probably a step removed, as my parents were actually the immigrants who came to America, and I was largely raised in the US, although my childhood experience was a little bit unusual, because even though we lived in America, we spoke Albanian at home, and we had really hardly any non-Albanian friends. And our friends and family got together every week, and we would work hard all week, and we would party hard all weekend. So it was, but we were always with each other. So I didn't actually know how to speak English until I was well into my seventh year of life, and it was a bit strange, because my parents didn't know that in America kids go to school before the age of 7. So they brought me to school, and I was supposed to be in 2nd grade by then. So little did I know, I was playing catch up from day one on a variety of fronts, and much of what you all have shared resonates with me. I was not as able as you all with the name topic. My birth name was Recep, and over the course of almost 18 years of explaining where Lagaslavi is, and where Albany is, and how Albanians are from Albany, and countless other topics that, I didn't have time for a geography lesson every time I introduced myself. So I finally gave in, and also mainly probably driven by the fact that in a professional setting, every time I introduced myself, it became an interaction that sometimes took 10% of the meeting to get through. So Actually, Gezim said it very well, as an accommodation to those who I was trying to, I guess I'll say I was trying to be an emblematic American, and a model citizen and a good Albanian. And in that path, it meant some compromises to bridge those two worlds. I talk to my kids about this a lot because their generation is quite different. And I would say even America today is quite different. It's no longer the place where assimilation is your path to acceptance. I think my children have grown up with the experience of nearly all of our American friends enjoying immersing themselves into our culture and feeling very comfortable, as Albanian hospitality often makes it very easy, being part of our extended family in many respects. And in some respects, they are just like us. Our close friends, coexist with our cultural opportunities. And we likewise are obviously 1 foot in this great country and 1 foot in the, one of the oldest civilizations in the world. And so that makes us blessed in many ways. And my kids are very much in touch with that. Their Albanian is perhaps not fluent, but they are very, very much in touch with that identity, that dual identity. And I remember very vividly when my children first landed in Tirana airport, and I looked at them as they were looking out the window, trying to see where this place was that they are from and what that might evoke in them. And my youngest daughter, I remember so vividly turning over to me and looking at me with this sort of pause and hesitation and this like wonder in her eye. But the first words that came out of her mouth was, "I'm home." And I remember, just my blood rushing and just, hugging her because I couldn't believe she said that. And I also remember moments of touring many of those places, Ilira, that you just shared around Albania and really even beyond Albania to the other Albanian populated areas in the region. And my oldest daughter is also naturally curious, and she would ask many questions. And in fact, even this topic of the name is something she many times has said to me, "How could you change it? Why would you change it?" Because her name is Zana, and there isn't a single teacher that has ever pronounced it right the first time. And she makes sure it's not a Zaina or a Zina or some other thing, but it is a Zana, and her identity is very important. But I think I will tell you that our kids have it different. And in some ways, they are able to enrich their peers in a way that we sometimes weren't afforded the opportunity to do. And when Zana used to walk into her school, they had these flags of all the countries represented in her school. And the first flag was alphabetically Albania. So every day she went to school, she felt welcomed and she felt like she belonged. And many of us, I think, felt quite the opposite. And Ilira, something you said to me also resonated, because only very recently, over the past 10 years or so, I've gotten to know the Albanian community in Greece a bit. And those are probably among the most challenging realities for Albanian diaspora. And I've heard so many tortured stories of what people had to do. And oftentimes when I think about what I've had to experience, it pales in comparison to what our community there has had to live through. And I think you hit it really, really well when you said that the ones that are struggling the hardest are the ones that are trying to hide from their identity, because I think the ones that reveal it, as by the way, as I did when I first visited Athens, I remember my cab driver was the first person to ask me as soon as I got out of the airport and into a cab, "So where are you from?" I said, "I'm Albanian." And he said, "No, you are not. It's impossible." And I said, how can that be? I said, "I absolutely am Albanian." He said, no, Albanians don't come out in the daytime. I said, well, apparently they do. I said, maybe you need to look in the daytime too. And interestingly enough, that led to meeting a friend of his who was a jeweler, who then introduced me to another friend of his. I was like the toy that they had discovered that they had to show their other friends. And we ended up at a dinner, actually, with all of these people that night, and they paid, which was something. As a banker, I'm used to paying for dinners, so I don't usually get dinners for me. But we ended up having an amazing night of mutual discovery. And these were people that weren't necessarily racist because they were predisposed to it, but they were trained by virtue of these stories about the small group of people that did bad things, like every community has, and probably multiplied by the fact that so many in the community that were doing good things and working hard and educating themselves and contributing in so many ways were invisible to them. And so I think we have much to learn, and I'm so grateful for this invitation to be on this panel. I honestly had no idea what we were going to talk about, but I think this has been one of the most interesting panels I've been in for quite some time. And usually I'm forced to do these things on the business side, but this is actually one I'm so grateful I had a chance to be part of. And I can't wait to hear Ilir Zherka's presentation, because he's one of the coolest guys I've ever met.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You all right?
Yes.
Okay, that was fantastic. Yeah, and we're getting some beautiful questions, beautiful comments in the chat here. So let's do that. But Ilir, you want to close us up?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you so much. Everyone can hear me. Well, greetings from California. As you can see behind me, it's still dark here. It was nice to get up early and be part of this conversation. Thanks to all the panelists, Gezim, Dida, Rich. I appreciate that. You're a very cool guy yourself. I appreciate that story. You and I grew up in New York around the same time. So I was born in Malzi, and we came to the United States, to New York City in 1968. We lived in the South Bronx. We were ethnic minorities. We were racial minorities in a very turbulent time in American history. If you know anything about 1968, there was a lot happening. And my family, I grew up in a very political family. We were political refugees. My father in particular raised us with a sense of duty to our homeland, but also with a belief that we were going back someday. He left Albania when he was about 13 or so years old in 1948, and he grew up in Montenegro, and that's where he got married and had most of his kids with my mom, who was from Vulthai. And so when we were raised in New York, very similar stories to everyone else, as to some extent outsiders. For us, that sense of being an outsider was magnified by this idea that someday we were going back, that communism would fall in Albania and we were going back. And in our family, that sense of return was really powerful. So we had a sense of identity that helped ground us, right? We were Albanians, we were from this place. My last name is from the town in Tropoja where we're from. So for me, it was even more grounded, right? Not only was I Ilir from Albania, but I was Ilir from, the cartoon Zherka, cartoon in Zherka. And that gave us a considerable grounding. But the sense of, we're going back also, I think, kept us from being fully immersed in American life. And being Albanian in the South Bronx, you certainly felt that difference. It was a little bit different when I moved, I think I was about 14, 15 years old, to the northern part of the Bronx. We had a lot of Albanian Americans there. We all called each other cousins. If you met an Albanian back then, there weren't a lot of us. Every Albanian was your cousin. You pretended to Americans, as we used to call, the Italians and the Irish kids we hung out with, and the Jewish kids and Puerto Ricans and black kids we hung out If they said, "Oh, do you know so and so?" You know, let's say Rich. He's like, "Oh yeah, he's my cousin. He's my cousin. He's my cousin." So I went to high
You are
school.
my cousin, just to be clear.
I went to high school probably with about 100 people that I called cousins. You know. And that experience was great. Fast forward to law school. Oh, and I brought up. I don't have a slide, but I did bring a photograph of us in the 70s, and I don't know if you can see that. That's my family and I with my parents, 7 kids, mother and father. I'm the person in the far left there. Fast forward, I'm in law school. I, meet the love of my life, who became my wife, Linda. My wife, Linda, is from here, from the U.S. Her family heritage goes back primarily to Scotland, but her mom also has German. Both of her mother's grandmothers were German, 100% German. So, so she has that typical mixed American background, and we're in law school, and she loves my name. And by the way, if I were smart, I would have adopted a nickname, but my parents explained the origin of my name, and I just could never bring myself to it. But my brother Naim went by Sergio, my brother Quitim went by Timmy, my brother Seth went by Steph, my sister Nejmia went by Blondie, but me, I was Ilir. I was Ilir, and I had to explain myself all the time, and I dug in, and I always, insisted on people pronouncing my name correctly, and my last name, Zh, not Z. And so I met my wife. She loved my name. She loved my history, the background. One day we're at the law school library. She comes up to me. This was 1991. And she says, I have a great idea. Communism was falling everywhere, but not in Albania yet. She said, if communism falls in Albania, why don't we go there after law school, and we'll find projects and jobs, and we'll do something interesting. And I'm thinking, I had just visited Albania for the first time in 1990. They let immigrantes, as we were called, Albanians from Albania, back for the first time in 1990. And I went with my parents, and it blew me away, that experience. But I also saw the infrastructure. I saw, the need. So I said to her, "Are you crazy? Why would we go to live in Albania for a year?" But she convinced me. And I thought, by then this sense of, hey, we're definitely going back didn't seem as realistic as it was when we were growing up. But I thought this would be a great experience. She'll get to learn a little bit of Albanian and get to understand the culture. And me, I'll go back to where I'm from. This is my place. No one will ever mispronounce my name. I'll, be rooted in my country. And of course, we go back, we live in Tirana, and we're there for about a month or two. And I'm just feeling great about being there. Of course, my Albanian is terrible, and, I'm struggling with that. One day I go into a market in Tirana, and it was sort of a market bordered by buildings. So you go into the market area, and I got to meet some of the people in the stalls. And this guy at the edge of the market says in a loud voice, "Oh, nakador Americani." And I said, "Oh, there's another American here." I was like looking around. And this is 1992. There weren't a lot of Albanian Americans in Albania. There wasn't, a lot of people other than Albanians. I'm looking around and I don't see anyone. I'm like, he means me. And during that experience, actually, it took me going back to Albania and learning how American really I am, and Albanian, for me to finally shed everything. Up until then, I felt a lot of what other people were talking about, the sense of being two people in two places, divided. Was I Albanian? Was I American? I had trouble for a long time before I went to Albania saying I was Albanian American. I would say I'm Albanian. I would almost never say the American part. But during that experience, I realized how American I really am, having grown up here. And that's okay. Actually, it's great. There are a lot of things about being American that are fantastic. And then there are a lot of things about being Albanian, the sense of family, the sense of respect, the sense of serving other people. We were very traditional being from Tripoli in my family. And a lot of Albanian culture was ingrained in us. And it's something that I've brought into my life and into my family. And I'll close out, Mentor, with just one story about names. So my wife and I, as we were having kids, we're like, okay, well, what are the names we're going to use? And so she had, some names in her mind before she met me that were very American. I was like, no, we can't do that. I had names that were very Albanian. She was like, no, we can't do that. And so we decided we would use names that were universal. We named my son Alexander, and we named my daughter Hana. And the idea was that those names work in both Albanian and in English. And then fast forward, my son, who got into sports early, playing baseball, starting around age 8 or so, was never called Alec, which is what we call him at home by his nickname, but was always called Zherka. It's like, all right, we'll take it. we would meet his friends' parents, and we would say Alec this and Alec that, and they would say, "Who's Alec? You mean Zherka?" Like, yeah, I guess Zherka. Like, isn't that his first name? Anyway, so it's wonderful to hear these stories. I recognize that all of us took up most of the time, Mentor. I don't know how you want to spend the remaining 4 minutes, but it's been wonderful to hear people's stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilir, and thank you, everybody. We have some questions, but before we go to them, I have a okay, and the question is, if you would sum it up in one sentence, okay, what is a gift that you carry with you from the homeland? Okay, what is the gift you carry within you from the homeland? What is that in one sentence? Okay, and we're going to start with you, Gezim, Ilira, Richard, and then Ilir.
This strong feel of belonging to something that I don't see in other people, that we see only in us, in Albanians.
Belonging. Thank you so much, Ilira.
A thing that I definitely took from being Albanian and that I'm very grateful is resilience. It's something that is very characteristic in our people, and just by showing this panel as an example, some stories are tough and we're laughing here, and our muscles are relaxing, even though it's things where one would normally clench their jaw telling them, and I think it's something very empowering to be resilient and keep a lightness in it all, despite things being sometimes quite harsh.
Yeah, I would pick up on Ilira's comment and say that I remember telling tales to my kids about Albanians dancing even in the midst of war. I mean, soldiers would stand up, and on an evening when they're just resting before going to war again the next day, there would be a dance around the fire. I think the other thing too that maybe motivates all of that is Albanians that are connected to their identity, I think also latch on to this ancient root that feels like a responsibility for every generation to carry forward, because so many civilizations have tried to erase us. And there is this historic, I'll call it almost tradition that is passed on to survive, prevail, preserve. And I wanted to later on maybe get to Crisela's question, because that also contributed to some of the elements that we're not so proud of, that are a byproduct of isolationism, a byproduct of protection against everyone, because everyone's actually in our historic experience has generally been harmful to us. Outsiders being perceived generally as bad because that history is tortured and long. But I think as a general matter, we have this unwritten history that is about connecting to that original root and protecting it, no matter where you go. I mean, I've met Albanians literally in every part of the world, and we all share that in common. I've been called cousin in Switzerland. I've been called cousin in Germany. I've been called cousin in London and other places. So with people I'd never met before, and always received this sense of belonging together, even though, and eventually over the course of time, and my kids actually represent it a little bit differently, because in their minds, they think there's 300 million Albanians around the world, because everywhere they go, there's Albanians.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard. Ilir, what about you?
I would say for us, a big a sense of service, right? You're supposed to treat your guests better than you treat yourself. You give them the larger piece of something. You give them the best food. You serve them self. So this sense of mitsi is a very powerful thing. It's something that is central to my family's life, and something we've passed down to my kids. And I've seen them, when they were young, struggling, right? They would break a piece of chocolate in half, and one piece was larger than the other. They would look at it. They really wanted to keep that larger piece, but they knew they were Albanians and they had to give it to someone else. And that sense of, you treat others better than you treat yourself. I've seen that in so many Albanians. And when I know people who come back from Albania, they say, wow, the people are fantastic, or Kosovo or somewhere else where Albanians live. I know it's because it's that thing, right? That thing that we do that's central to our culture, and also to some other cultures too, but especially to Albanian culture.
Yeah, wow. Incredible. So, my friends, I know we're at time, and for the questions, maybe you can reach out later more to the speakers. But beautiful questions, and what I would say, this is a beautiful time to remind us of the purpose of us all meeting here and the purpose of this conference. The original L is about, how do we support our youth in diaspora to find their roots and, find their belonging, connect with resilience, honor their ancestry, as well as just live fully through the sense of hospitality and service to humanity, right? It's a beautiful program that Gezim team is putting together. So learn more about it. Stay tuned when we announce more things. And until then, please give me a round of emojis to thank our speakers here. Okay. Thank you so much, Gezim, Ilira, and Richard. It's been a pleasure, and I wish you the best of luck. I'm in upstate New York, so I might see some of you here that are in the States, but if not, we'll have a tea in Kosovo or something.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye. Miropafshim.
Miropafshim.